All right, welcome to the explainer. So, what happens when a guy who lives by a super strict set of rules has to throw them all out the window just to keep one single promise? Well, today we're jumping headfirst into the high octane plot of The Transporter 2. We're going to see how a seemingly simple driving job explodes into a desperate race against the clock to stop a, you guessed it, deadly bioterrorist attack. And this quote? This is everything. It's the core principle of our guy, Frank Martin. It's not just some random rule he's teaching a kid. Nope, it's a promise. And believe me, it is going to be pushed to the absolute limit. It's going to force him to figure out real fast which rules are actually worth breaking. Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start with our man with rules, then dive right into the kidnapping. After that, we'll peel back the layers on a pretty deadly deception, jump into the race for the cure, and then, of course, finish with the final showdown. All right, Section 1, a man with rules. We're talking about the calm before the storm. So let's set the scene. We're in the middle of Miami, total vibrant chaos. And that city is the complete opposite of our main character, Frank Martin. This is a man who lives and breathes precision, discipline, and a super strict personal code. So, let's meet the man himself, Frank Martin. Now, on the surface, he's just a chauffeur, right? Driving for this super wealthy Billings family. But underneath that sharp suit, you've got an ex-Special Forces operative with a seriously lethal set of skills. Right now, he's just doing a favor, driving their young son Jack around. Just a simple job. Or so he thinks. This one's about to test him in ways he never saw coming. And Frank's discipline, it literally extends to everything, even his car. He's got these 3 simple rules, and it's actually become a kind of game between him and Jack. You gotta respect the car, greet the man, and buckle up. It's this little ritual that really gives you a window into Frank's super structured world. And maybe, just maybe, it's a hint that there's a real bond forming there, beyond just the job. Okay, Section 2, the kidnapping. A routine visit goes wrong. Because that world of rules and riddles we just talked about, it's about to get completely blown apart. And it all kicks off with such a simple thing. Jack's mom, Audrey, just asks Frank to take him to a routine doctor's appointment. What could go wrong, right? And just like that, a totally normal checkup turns into an absolute nightmare. We're talking minutes. Frank's Special Forces training kicks in, and he immediately spots that things are off. His suspicions are confirmed in the worst way possible, when someone tries to inject Jack with something, and suddenly, a full-blown gunfight explodes right there in the clinic. So what was the first red flag? It happens right at the reception desk. Jack's regular doctor is suddenly out sick. Now, for a guy like Frank, who lives by patterns and predictability, this is a huge deal. It's the very first sign that something is seriously, dangerously wrong here. And then another one, the usual nurse, also gone. Same weak excuse, the flu. Okay, so 2 key people missing, that's not a coincidence anymore. That is a planned, coordinated substitution. And you can just see Frank's whole mindset shift. He's not the chauffeur anymore. He's the protector. He knows without a doubt they've just walked right into a trap. And it all comes to a head over a single needle. The fake doctor tries to give Jack an injection, and that is the breaking point. That's when Frank's own rule, that promise he made to the boy about never making a promise you can't keep, it just becomes this absolute unbreakable command. He steps in, and that's when all hell breaks loose. So after this insane fight and a wild escape, Frank and Jack are on the run. But the people after them, they are relentless. During this crazy high-speed chase, they get cornered, and Frank is forced at gunpoint to take on a passenger he definitely did not want, this woman, Lola. For a guy whose entire life is about controlling every single variable, well, he's just lost all of it. All right, Section 3, a deadly deception. This is about way more than just a ransom. So Frank is forced to give Jack up to save him, and he's brought face to face with the masterminds. And it's here, right in the heart of their operation, that the real, terrifying reason for all this finally comes out. So the kidnappers, they make their demand, $5 million. And look, on the surface, this seems like a pretty standard ransom plot, right? Target a big-shot government official's kid, but Frank's gut is telling him something's off. And he's right. The money, it's just a distraction. It's a smokescreen for something way, way more sinister. See, the real weapon here wasn't a gun at all. It was what was inside that needle. Recombinant, retroimmune, double polymorphing air fluid. Yeah, it's a mouthful. Basically, it's a lab-created designer bioweapon, and it is brutally effective. It turns the host, in this case Jack, into a super contagious carrier. They spread death with every single breath they take. And then, poof, the virus just disappears without a trace after 24 hours. I mean, talk about the perfect assassination tool. So you see, Jack was never the actual target. He was the weapon. The plan itself was just chillingly simple. Infect the kid, give him back to his family, let him unknowingly infect his dad, and his dad, who happens to be the head of national drug control policy, would then walk into a huge international summit and basically become a walking biological bomb, wiping out the leaders of every major anti-drug agency on the planet. And who funded this whole thing? The Colombian drug cartels, the very people they were all there to fight. It's diabolical. And now for Section 4, Race for the Cure. The clock is absolutely ticking. After that horrifying revelation, everything changes. The mission is completely transformed. This isn't just a kidnapping anymore. No, this is about stopping a global catastrophe. And Frank, who's still bound by that promise he made to Jack, is the only person who can stop it. The race for the cure is officially on. Of course, the villains have an insurance policy. It's the antidote. But then they drop this unbelievably cruel twist on him. In the entire world, there are only 2 vials of the cure. Just 2. The odds aren't just bad, they are basically impossible. So Frank hunts down one of the guys who created the virus, a scientist named Dimitri. Things get desperate, and Dimitri actually injects Frank, thinking he's infected him. But nope, it was a bluff. A brutal fight follows. The entire lab gets demolished, but Frank walks out of the wreckage. He's not infected, and more importantly, he has one of those 2 precious vials of the antidote. So now he's got 1 dose of the antidote, and he makes this frantic, desperate call to Audrey Billings. But think about this. He's got to get around the police, who now think he's the kidnapper, and somehow convince this terrified mother of an absolutely unbelievable truth. Hey, your son is a weapon, and your husband is the real target. I mean, how do you even start that conversation? Okay, on to the grand finale. Section 5, the final showdown, a high-altitude confrontation. Frank gets the cure to Jack, so 1 promise is fulfilled. But there's another one still out there. The masterminds Gianni and Lola are getting away, and they have the last dose. Frank's mission just became one of pure retribution. He has to stop them, or they get away with everything. And it all boils down to this. Frank against the 2 architects of all this chaos. You've got Lola, the brutal and super efficient field operative, basically the muscle. And then you have Gianni Cellini, the cool, calculating mastermind who was pulling all the strings from the beginning, the enforcer and the strategist. So as their private jet is literally taking off, Frank does something that is just completely impossible. He drives his car off a pier, launches it through the sky, and crashes it into the plane's landing gear. Think about that. He's not just chasing them anymore. He's boarding their plane, turning their getaway into a locked room battle, thousands of feet up in the air. Now they're inside this out-of-control jet, and Gianni makes his last, fatal mistake. He's holding the final dose of the antidote, and he thinks he has all the power in the world. So he taunts Frank, saying, "I am the antidote." He really sees himself as a god in that moment. But what he really did was just seal his own fate. So when your whole world is built on rules, what happens when the only way to win is to break every single one of them? Well, Frank secures that final antidote, and he proves that a man who is defined by his rules can actually find his greatest strength in knowing when to break them. This whole insane, explosive story comes full circle, right back to that one simple idea. Never make a promise you can't keep. And what Frank Martin shows us is that to keep the one promise that truly matters, sometimes you have to be willing to shatter every other rule you've ever lived by.